Hi, my name is Sean Donnelly. I'm a learning and development manager at the largest professional services firm in the world. And I'm also an educator in the field of entrepreneurship. And being entrepreneurial is a theme that runs through my life. I set up a youth club in inner city Dublin years ago. In my career, I've supported hundreds of entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs with training and with consulting. And I've taught entrepreneurship at postgraduate level. And today I'd like to talk about how I would like to transform my approach to entrepreneurship education. In teaching entrepreneurship to teachers and to social entrepreneurs at third level, I have observed resistance to the word entrepreneurship and to the topic of entrepreneurship. And I think the resistance is rooted in a preconception that the goal of the entrepreneur is to generate wealth for themselves as opposed to doing good for society. And I think for teachers and for social entrepreneurs, they very much align with the idea of doing good for society. And so those two ideas seem to be in conflict. And that's a big barrier that I think needs to be addressed if I want to transform my approach to entrepreneurship education. So, this is the second video in a series of two. And in the first video, we talked about what entrepreneurship is and why entrepreneurship is good for people and society, and what we can learn by teaching and learning entrepreneurship in terms of learning transversal skills that are applicable both to setting up a business, to setting up some kind of other entrepreneurial or social entrepreneurial venture, or even being intrapreneurial within an organization, and of course, being entrepreneurial in terms of looking at ourselves and identifying how we can be better. Now, in this video, um, I'd like to talk about how to teach entrepreneurship because that is, of course, the educator's big challenge. So let's take a look. In the first video, we talked about developing an educational entrepreneurial spirit. And so, entrepreneurship education should actually start with aiming for personal growth and transformation. It should equip students with the knowledge and the skills and the mindset that empower them to become agents of change to create value for themselves and for others. And I've been trying to visualize what an approach to entrepreneurship education that includes starting a business, includes being intrapreneurial, includes social entrepreneurship, and developing that personal entrepreneurial educational spirit. I've been trying to think about what that might look like, and this is what I have come up with. Um, as you can see, I've attempted to make this sort of XY axis where our motivation for being entrepreneurial might be to generate profit, or it might be to make an impact that matters for the world. Maybe that's for ourselves, maybe that is for our classroom, our community, and so on. And it can be outwardly focused or inwardly focused. So, outwardly focused to make a better world in some way, to create value for other people, or inwardly focused to try and be a better person, better, in my case, better man, better educator, better son. And so we can start to think about then um, perhaps where our own values lie within this kind of structure. And in terms of speaking about values, as an educator, my values are to connect, to empower, and to inspire. And I don't think I'd be being true to my values if I spent my time only teaching people about entrepreneurship in a descriptive way. I think entrepreneurship education is way more than teaching people how to start and manage a business. It's about it. It is not about teaching accounting and finance or sales and marketing or management, which people might think about. They're all disciplines in their own right. And so, if we go back to our definition of entrepreneurship, teaching entrepreneurship is really about helping people to look at the world, to see how the world is, and then get them thinking about how the world could be. So it's about helping people to see what's possible and then giving them the tools to channel their curiosity to create value for themselves and for others. But how can you teach people to look at the world in a different way? That sounds like a pretty difficult sort of challenge. And the truth is, you can't teach people to be curious. You cannot teach people to be empowered and creative. I cannot teach that. Um, I cannot teach you to have an entrepreneurial spirit. You can learn it though, but I cannot teach it. You develop these things through the educational process. So that brings us to the difference then between teaching and learning. So in a teacher-centric approach, the teacher knows all the answers, but the entrepreneurial experience is different for everybody. So a teacher cannot know all the answers because entrepreneurship um, covers or filters through lots of different disciplines, science and engineering and society and education and so on. So a teacher trying to address an educational problem, they will have a different experience to somebody who is trying to create a technology tool for accountants. So I can't advise the accountant about their domain, and I don't know the teacher's class environment. But what I can do is create a learning environment um, that helps guide those learners to work through these things for themselves. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, a teacher-centric approach where the teacher shares their knowledge and gets people to write essays about entrepreneurship theory simply is not going to help people be entrepreneurial. That's not to say that there's no value in teaching, of course. It's very hard for an educator to tell a student how to be entrepreneurial, though. That's the thing. So, what an educator can do is provide frameworks to guide learners to start thinking entrepreneurially and not just about entrepreneurship. And so, I like to use frameworks such as the value proposition canvas and the mission model canvas that I think can facilitate experiential learning and get people being or behaving entrepreneurially without necessarily having to teach people about entrepreneurship. Um, and so I think the best pedagogical technique for learning entrepreneurship is experiential learning. It's like me trying to play my guitar. I can't watch videos of Jimi Hendrix shredding the guitar, um, and think I can just watch those videos and do the same. I need to pick up the guitar. I need to start manipulating my fingers. And what the teacher can do is provide guidance and um, stimulate my interest in a safe environment so they can provide that guidance, but I still need to do the practice. And so, in my approach to entrepreneurial education, I think it's better to deliver a webinar or even record a video like this to introduce a topic and then save face time for more learner centric experiential learning. So, this way, I can save face time for workshops and for hackathons where learners get to behave like entrepreneurs. Then I can take on a more facilitative or coaching role in the learning journey. And ideally, I want to help learners synthesize their domain expertise with the entrepreneurial methods. So, in this case, I can master the entrepreneurial method and provide the frameworks and guidance, but actually, people will still turn up with their own domain expertise. So, in this case, I'm just providing guidance for them. Um, the kind of knowledge that can be imparted by me, in this case, um, includes things like theories of entrepreneurship, case studies, and entrepreneurship processes and methods, kind of like what we're doing in this video. And so, in terms of equipping people with the knowledge to be entrepreneurial, here are some books or entrepreneurial oriented books that I would recommend. So there is the Business Model Canvas by Alex Osterwalder. It's a great foundational book. It's available in most libraries in digital and um, print, or if you don't want to buy it, it's a lot cheaper than most academic textbooks, and it's available in the DCU library digitally. There's also an accompanying book called The Value Proposition Canvas, which is all about testing hypotheses with customers and beneficiaries. They're both very high level and easy to consume, and I'd highly recommend studying these books. And then this one isn't a book, but I'd encourage you to read a guy called Steve Blank's notes on the mission model canvas, which is basically an adaptation of the business model canvas, but for mission oriented entrepreneurs. What do I mean by that? That is people who they're not in the business of generating profits, but rather they want to generate value or impact for beneficiaries rather than customers. So it's very similar to the business model canvas, but it just sort of changes the inflection a little bit. There's also a great book called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. He says that to begin any enterprise, you start by talking to beneficiaries. And I think that makes sense. He also advocates for starting with what he calls a minimum viable product. So that's the bare minimum solution, and to see what people think of it before adding more features. So the idea is that you can test your idea and make changes to it quickly in a less wasteful way than trying to complete the end product before testing it. So he recommends using a process called the 5 whys to get to the heart of a problem, so he can solve for that rather than a related and less important problem. These books are all available as digital downloads in the DCU library, by the way. And then when it comes to skills, it's easier to acquire knowledge, so I can recommend books to you till the cows come home. But when it comes to skills, these are things that require practice. And some of the key entrepreneurial skills are things like how to open or be open to and identify opportunities to be entrepreneurial. And these kind of things require practice. And we can do that by getting people to use tools like the value proposition canvas to guide people. They provide a nice design thinking framework to understand and empathize with others and identify the challenges that other people have, that can then help you identify opportunities to solve for those challenges. And I share these materials in the resources that accompany this video. We can organize hackathons. So hackathon is kind of like a low risk, maybe high emotion atmosphere, and it gets learners to embed themselves in the entire startup process for a day or more. They get to win, lose, and get feedback, but most importantly, they get to practice entrepreneurship. And I co-created a handbook on that you can use to organize your own hackathon, and it's included as a resource with this video. Finally, then, having the right mindset is important. We talked about that in the first video. And you will hear in the podcasts that I recorded to support this artifact that when I ask entrepreneurs about the most important skills that they need to succeed, they talk about things like being able to identify those opportunities. They talk about being curious. They talk about working with lots of different people, because it's generally not possible for a single entrepreneur to have all of the skills that they need to succeed. These aren't things that can be taught, but they can be learned and cultivated. And again, we talked about cultivating some of those things through things like hackathons, workshop-based learning, where we get people to use the value proposition canvas and the mission model canvas to address educational problems in their own setting. And in fact, according to a report by the European Commission, cultivating an entrepreneurial mindset, it requires a sea change in our approach to education. And it emphasizes active learning and the provision of new experiences for students. And some researchers suggest employing non-conventional, experiential, pedagogical methods and making learning entrepreneurial in process as well as in subject. And that's why the resources that support the entrepreneurship module that go with this video, they're designed to get learners practicing entrepreneurship, emphasizing skills and mindset and experiential practical learning rather than simply teaching people about entrepreneurship and how the term was first noted in the literature by Richard Cantillon in the 18th century. It's very interesting, but it doesn't necessarily help us be entrepreneurial. So what are some things that we can do to cultivate that entrepreneurial mindset? I've created this little model for us here: act, build, connect, um, diligent or be diligent, and enhance your practice with theory. So let's start with act, or get out of the building. Um, Entrepreneur and educator Steve Blank, he talks about what he describes as getting out of the building, which refers to getting to know the people whose problems we're trying to solve for. And it's a mindset because it forces us to challenge our assumptions and avoid falling in love with our ideas, because we can't assume um, that the person who we're trying to solve problems for is just like us. There's nobody out there in the world that is exactly like you. And you learn things by being human centric and focusing on them. So it's good to go out and talk to people and ask them, what do they like? What do they need? What jobs are they trying to get done? What frustrates them? What are their values? What motivates them? And if we take the time to understand people, um, then we have a better opportunity to solve their problems. And the value proposition canvas is a really nice framework that can help you guide your thinking here. Um, then there's build something, or try something even. And so I mentioned the minimum viable products. So we can create so-called minimum viable products. They can be brochures, prototypes, one-page websites. It can be as simple as a pitch deck, um, or a drawing of our idea. And the idea is that we can't just live in our head and convince ourselves that our ideas and our plans are wonderful. Um, we can bring our idea to reality by developing that kind of prototype and then showing it to people. Um, and yeah, that prototype can be a drawing, a brochure, a website. It could be a basic working product even. And the idea is by getting to work on your idea and creating that initial prototype or draft, we can show it to people and we can ask them, would you use this? How would you use it? How would it add value to your life? And you might be surprised what you learn from people, because some of the most famous products out there um, started off being designed to address one kind of solution, but then people started to use them for something else entirely. Um, yeah, so it's worth asking people how they would use your idea. Then there's connect. So entrepreneurship is a team sport. You can't do it on your own. I remember being in college with a guy who said that he wanted to be an entrepreneur because he didn't like people. What an oxymoron. Entrepreneurs cannot be experts at everything. So they'll always need to collaborate with other people and with other organizations. And it's a really important part of the process. And in our podcast interview with Luke Saunders, the CEO of StudyClicks, he talks about having the idea and he talks about having the idea for his business and really understanding what kind of solution was needed, but he didn't have the technical skills to go out and build that. And so he partnered with a developer, and the two of them have built the StudyClicks business, and now it's a much bigger team than just the two of them. So that I think is worth reflecting upon, that entrepreneurship requires a lot of collaboration. And then finally, be diligent. And that means treating collaborators and advisors and clients with respect. One of the things that you'll observe when you listen to the podcast with Dr. Roisin Lyons is just how supportive the entrepreneur community in Ireland is. Most entrepreneurs are working hard on building something that they believe in. And not everybody understands what they're doing, because most of them um, they think, well, actually, you could probably be earning more money if you just had a job. And yet, some of these people keep on going. And so they're very supportive of each other. They support each other at sort of networking events. They meet for coffee, they share knowledge and advice, and so on. And so it's good to participate in that. And if people help you, then help people back. But then also, we talked about the minimum viable product. While we talk about the creating the minimum product, that doesn't mean cutting corners on things like safety and ethics, of course. So we need to be careful about those kinds of things. And then finally, enhance your practice with theory. So you'll notice theory comes last in this model as opposed to coming first. You don't need to have a degree in entrepreneurship to be entrepreneurial, but the world is certainly littered with good ideas that are poorly executed. And so that brings us full circle back to knowledge. It is important to leverage theory and use frameworks from this program to guide your thinking. Tools like the business model canvas, the value proposition canvas, they're designed to help us to test our ideas in a low fidelity way before we invest too much of our time and maybe even our money in developing them. So they help us bridge that gap between failure and success. A great way of contextualizing theory actually is to use guest speakers, and that's reflected in the literature. Using guest speakers from industry to provide talks and act as role models is very commonly used to inspire and to motivate and to build self-efficacy in learners. And the literature indicates that these kinds of experiential activities give learners exposure to pseudo real world experience of entrepreneurship. The sense of realism has the potential to increase ownership of learning. And as part of this artifact, I've produced 3 podcasts, one with a leading entrepreneurship educator, and then 2 with entrepreneurs in the educational space. So that's a good place to end this video, I think. I've attempted to create a framework to help you think about what entrepreneurship is, and then create some structure for thinking about how to update your knowledge and your skills and your mindset via experiential and active learning methods to become more entrepreneurial in your practice, and also be better able to teach entrepreneurship or even facilitate the learning of entrepreneurship. And maybe that's the one thing to take from this video. So I'd encourage you to take a look around the Padlet that I've designed for you. Within the Padlet, you will find materials that will both help you update your knowledge and your skills and your mindset, that you will be able to become more entrepreneurial or develop that educational entrepreneurial spirit. But then you'll also be able to bring some of those tools into your own classroom to help other people become entrepreneurial as well. Thanks for your time.